Good morning, everyone. All right, let me get this link shared out. Gotta share it out in a few places. We'll get started. Got the Bitcoin chart upside down. I'll share it in the members channel first because I don't have notifications everywhere. These thumbnails are awesome. Hold on. Let me go grab this link here. Throw that there. Hope everyone's doing well today. Someone's saying the audio's gone. It might be gone, or we might just be... The audio should be working. Someone can let me know. Okay, great. Well, we'll see if Bitcoin can break out here. I'm in a couple longs. I added to my long last night. We'll flip the chart so it's not upside down. I made a joke this morning when I woke up in the Discord that I was flipping the chart upside down to see if we could let gravity help Bitcoin move. But order flow is quite bullish. We'll take a look at that. I did add to my long last night. So I added to my long. I have a long, I'll show it later, but I added, and I'll explain why. My stop was down here under this 786, under this wick. A little aggressive, about 0.77% stop, but 4R to all-time highs, almost 5R. But it held overnight. We came down a little further. We're getting a nice move right now. But let's go to the charts here. So I got long for a position towards the all-time highs as after this big wick we had here. And then on the retest of this, if we want to call this a range. So I was looking for this retest. I got long here. I've been sitting in this long as order flow has just been bullish. Obviously ranging at the highs here. And then I did take some scalps in here. We had some bullish order flow in here, but I added last night here. We ended up holding up the 786. There's a point of control here. Getting a nice move off it now. But we can see maybe we'll push to all-time highs during the live stream. Maybe we won't. So this is order flow, and I won't spend a ton of time reviewing every live stream. I review what order flow is. Obviously, there's a lot of educational content I talk about every day in the ATHS Discord. But go back and watch any stream, and usually at the start I'm explaining it. But anyways, basically, this is since we had this big liquidation wick from all-time highs. Order flow has just been consistently showing signs of absorption, and then even from here, as we drew back down, again, just bullish absorption. So it doesn't mean that price has to go up, but it does shift the probabilities in favor of it. It does make sense, in my view, to be looking for longs off of this. You know, I always prefer to find my longs on support because Bitcoin just has this incredible ability to just range and reject, especially locally, at potential breakouts. And you're just going to find yourself, it's maybe easy to say now, like maybe this is a breakout worth longing, but as price comes up, pushes into these highs, order flow looks quite bullish. Longing for a breakout, longing for a breakout, longing for a breakout. You're going to end up taking so many stop losses or ending up instantly underwater over and over and over again. Finding those longs down into retracements, into support, being patient for that, I think is a good style of trading. Always using risk management and invalidation. But of course, people end up buying into the highs often and selling into the lows and repeating the process and develop local ranges. But I would like to be rewarded for a bit of patience and getting into these longs, adding to these longs, and seeing a push up into all-time highs. I mean, the perfect, of course, trading of this range would have just been long, take profit, short, long, take profit, short, long, and so on. But the time frame of this trade for me, I'm looking to add back into longs for a push into all-time highs. I don't have a specific target. There's some interesting levels around 71, 72K. Obviously, we could just have another liquidity grab. So it's a possibility of a bigger breakout, and I think that's more reasonable given the order flow coming into a potential breakout here. But we're going to see. I would really like to just be live on the charts and make the decision if I'm going to take profits on my longs or hold them on a breakout, rather than having limit TP set here, just for the chance of a bigger move, right? And I did a members live stream yesterday, which an hour of it was just us ranging right here. But I'd like to be live on the charts personally, and maybe on a live stream. That's not as important to me, but it's always fun as price breaks up into the all-time highs. So I stayed up a bit last night, was giving price a chance to flip some of this, and said, I'll come and see where the charts are at tomorrow. I'll add to my long down here, and we'll see. But maybe we see it today. All right. It's probably worth just taking a quick look at what's going on in this move from an order flow perspective, and then maybe we'll look at a couple alt charts here. Do you want to all right, so from the lows here, we're seeing this kind of rally start, this uptrend. There's not, so far, nothing crazy in terms of volume and delta. I mean, again, it's always hard to predict whether or not local highs and pullbacks will come in, but one would assume there's a lot more liquidity to the upside. Maybe we'll see something kind of not alarming in the sense of anything to be scared of, but for the uptrend, something in order flow that makes it look like it's more likely to be a local top. Anything can happen here, but again, there's no really evidence that this is what the liquidity that price is targeting. So, and it's not to say that we don't have levels of resistance above our golden pockets right above this high. I mean, we could keep ranging, and this could be where we see some liquidity come in. But we'll see if we get a strong move or not. I'd prefer to see a stronger move off this big bullish absorption. We can take a quick look at FET as well. I have some low time frame stuff charted here. I did take a short on FET, and I took a stop on a hedge long as well. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know that I posted some quote-unquote bearish ideas on FET. It's not really, they're not so much bearish ideas. It's just structure. It's just high time frame structure. I had it on my chart. I drew it out on my chart way down here, and then I just hit it, and I set this ray as an alert. And then I got the alert on the ray, and I was like, oh, we're up at the, and I also had something I call a predictive fib pulled up here, which is if we rallied through here, what would make this these pivot lows the golden pocket. And so I just pulled this, when price was here, just pulled this up, imagining where a high would be to kind of make this a key pivot on a fib. And so those were the two kind of confluences. This is a log scale chart. And so anyways, the alert went off. I shared it. Obviously, people think I'm insane that a high could come in on FET. But I don't know. What's more insane? It's just going to go straight up forever, or that random altcoin is going to go down. But that said, I'm pretty open-minded to different things happening. So I took a short up here. I did a post on Twitter just saying if I was holding a big spot FET bag, I would maybe consider, if there was a failed breakout here and you see this, just selling off. That's what I would consider doing. And either waiting for a deeper retracement or just buy back where you sold if you start reclaiming this level. There's a bit of a caveat to that. But then you're just reducing your exposure. You're kind of aware of some of this high time frame structure, looking for signs of weakness. But I wouldn't be opposed to seeing, like, this just seems like too easy of a short, which is why I took the hedge long here. There's actually been some very nice local structure on FET, technical structure. On last night's live stream, someone was pointing out that this is just the 618 fib of this move. Got a nice bounce off that, kind of reclaimed the range. So I had kind of just pointed out that probably some structure you'd look to see. Like, I long stuff like this all the time. I said I wasn't particularly interested in longing it, but probably looking for a move up into these pivot highs. And I pretty much drew that without the double top on it back into a retest, which would then be the 618 fib with this. Then we had the 618 fib with this, and we've been washing around this level. I don't know, some interesting longs on FET, like especially as a scalp, would just be to come and run these lows and get a nice reaction there. And trading that back up into the highs of the range locally would make sense to me. Why is my computer like freezing? Struggling. But you have to be aware of this descending trend line as well. So yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing price run these highs one more time, and that's why I would be kind of interested taking some hedge longs and then catching the swing short again here. But if that doesn't happen, I have a short there. We'll see. I've de-risked it, so. But anyways, we can look at a few different charts. I do want to keep an eye on Bitcoin here as we run into this probably relevant local resistance. What's happening here? So this is like it's just a technical level where you're expecting some liquidity, taking that pivot high, have a nice fib confluence. So not surprising to see some kind of reaction here. Sometimes, especially as scalps, these little levels can be tradable, right? Just shorting into the rejection can just scalp it. But we're going to look at order flow here a little bit. It would be the same idea as I've really messed up this FET chart, but it's the exact same structural idea here as FET, right? So I always say that, all charts kind of move the same relative to their own structure. So it's not to say that the FET chart is identical to the Bitcoin chart, but what's happening here on Bitcoin with a local reaction here is we had a pivot high. Well, this is FET, but we had a pivot high. Price ran up into the 618 of the move, sweeping that pivot high, and had a reaction. We came and double topped it. The 618 of the move is 61.8% of the high to the low. That's where this fib comes from. And this is the exact same thing happening on a lower time frame. But what's Bitcoin doing, right? So it's just relative to structure, very similar idea, which is we have a local pivot high on the 15-minute chart. Price is running up, grabbing the liquidity into the 618 of the move. But from an order flow perspective, well, not a ton of volume up there. Not a ton of positive delta. No real evidence that there's a bunch of trap longs. And in fact, what we're seeing off this initial reaction is heavy selling. Market selling into the level. So to me, this probably isn't something I'd be interested in shorting. It does not mean price. I'm oftentimes not interested in shorting and price goes down anyways. But this isn't, from an order flow perspective, a super compelling short because it's sort of like a breakout, a little reaction. And what we're mostly seeing is evidence that there's heavy selling coming into the level. And so far, some of that's being absorbed. So, and not super high volume. I mean, it's not irrelevant, but I don't know. That's my 2 cents on whether or not I would short this level. Obviously, we could look for some kind of retracement as a possibility, and we can take a look at what a sign of strength would be after a reaction. I mean, you just have SR flips, things like that. But let me just look really quickly at when could you tell your opinion on Pepe? I'm not going to dive into a bunch of order flow questions, only because there's people who tune into a lot of these live streams, and I literally answer the same question every single time, and they're in every live stream. Okay, I'll give my thoughts on Pepe, and then we have a question about Bitcoin. I was looking for these lows to be taken on Pepe, so a little bit for a swing long. I mean, I went to sleep down here, and price is back up here. Back here, I'd drawn this kind of idea on Pepe of price coming down. We had a pretty big retracement, big impulse into the 618, big rejection, just lots of volatility on the 5-minute chart. Developing a range here. I mean, this looks kind of strong, but we could always do something like this. I think this is the key level to watch on Pepe. Could also reject from these local highs again. Either one, looking for signs of weakness here or here. And if we break out and claim that, well, hey, anything's possible. I wouldn't mind seeing price at some point rotate back into one of two levels for long setups. I'm not saying there aren't other long setups, by the way. I mean, you can set up trades how you want, but as far as just swing longs or higher time frame longs, I'd like to come see these lows taken at some point. Maybe we do form a range here, and the kind of more, I guess you could say, bearish target would be to come and take these lows. Up here, I was really interested in this level. I did share that on a live stream, but just coming and sweeping all this liquidity, did get a nice reaction from there. It's still interesting, like coming and just filling this wick. It might be worth watching, but this looks, if we break this down, no structure here, and why not have that deeper liquidity move? But I'm not saying price will do that. I'm just saying where I'd be interested in taking longs at support, whether it comes or not. And that's something really important to distinguish. So if I have, for example, I like the idea of Bitcoin pushing up through all-time highs. I think it's an interesting, it's a reasonable idea, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to open a long anywhere because I think Bitcoin could go to all-time highs. I'm still going to look for longs that are technically set up at support, and there was a chance in here, for example, that I didn't get a long trigger where I wanted one because I didn't long here. I waited for this retest, and we might not have got a retest, and price could have just gone straight up, and then I would have to be looking for a different setup. But anyways, I hope that makes sense. can have a thesis, but you should still, I think it's good to be disciplined and actually structure some trade setups and sort of have you could call it having a little bit of vision for the chart. Like instead of just imagining, whoa, what if price goes to 100K, and then you take a random long with a random stop loss. Have a little bit of vision maybe for how some of that price action could play out. For example, I took a stop on this on FET, so I'm not claiming to be Nostradamus. But when price was reclaiming here, I mean, on the live stream, I just said, probably see something like this, come up, take these highs, middle of the range, 618 of the move, come back down, and maybe either longing on a retest could be nice, or it would be interesting to come and retest these lows and sweep them. So those are just, that here, before any of this has happened, that's having a little bit of vision for the chart, right? About how price action could progress and how you might want to trade around it, instead of just thinking, I'm going to long here because we're breaking out, or, you know, what if FET goes to $50 and, you know, you long here with a stop here. Let's talk about my, there was a Bitcoin question. Someone said, didn't get Bitcoin clear picture. Are we expecting an upside move breaking all-time highs, or we may go back to stronger supports at 55, 58K? Well, anything can happen, and I know people don't like to hear that answer. You know what? So I take trades with invalidation. So when I'm long here, I have a stop loss. I have a stop loss when I'm adding to my longs here, and I'm open to these trades not working. I don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is that there's evidence of bullish absorption into aggressive selling. So I made a comment the other day, kind of a little jokey, but I said, I feel like I'm becoming a Bitcoin maxi, which again, you don't necessarily want to be doing at all-time highs just because order flow looks so bullish. And somebody said, the more bullish you get, the more price is just going to keep going down. That's how the market works. And it's not that I'm just bullish because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're at all-time highs, price is going to go to the moon. I'm just bullish because of data. There's bullish absorption. Now, I've seen bullish absorption not play out, so I don't think it's 100%, but I can reasonably position myself long here, I think, and look for longs into all-time highs because there's evidence big traders are just absorbing all of the selling pressure, and that can take a little while to play out, ranges form, and so, you know, a little bit of patience can kind of help navigate that a little bit, but I might just take stops on these longs, I don't know. So is it possible that price just comes down out of this and runs deeper levels? Yeah, and I'd take stops and I'd be interested in longing lower on a clean setup, which isn't really a big deal. So for example, for anyone that doesn't understand the basic concept of technical trading, it would be like this. I'm just going to give you a really technical trading with risk management and invalidation. So say this is my long setup. I'm long here and I'm targeting here. Let's make it like this. All right. If I'm quote unquote right, I make $5 for every dollar I risk. That's the risk reward ratio. If I'm wrong, so let's just say that I have a $100 account, I'm risking 1% per trade. I lose $1 or I make $5. That's the option here. And I'm adding on to an existing long, let's say. So I'm adding on to my longs, lose $1. I'm targeting maybe through all-time highs. Obviously both trades are in profits, but I'm not taking profits yet, so it doesn't really matter. If I get stopped out and I lose $1 there, well then maybe and people say, oh, you're such an idiot, you thought price was going to break out to all-time highs and you longed at 66K, you're a perma bull, whatever. I take my dollar stop loss and I'm out of the trade, and I look, and maybe we just have a big move down through this wick, and maybe I take another long, and maybe technically I can invalidate it a little bit closer, something like that. I do that, and I risk another dollar to make $9. And so I've taken a long here and lost a dollar. I've taken a long here and I've made $9.8, or if we have a bigger breakout, maybe I can hold it further. So what I don't do is just assume I know what the market is going to do and just open a big long and just let the price just keep moving against me as I sit in my long because I thought I knew what price was going to do. So structuring your trade with invalidation. Risk management is the sizing of your trade versus your invalidation, right? A standard is 1 to 2%. So everything I'm talking about here are trades structured with invalidation. So I truly couldn't care. Like so here's an example. I took longs on Bitcoin because we had a lot of bullish absorption before this rally and in this range. I took a long and was looking for all-time highs, and I actually took a long on this. I talked about this on a public live stream too, on this, just a little ad, willing to take profits up here. Now, so I had really good risk reward on these trades, right? And order flow was really bullish, so I looked for opportunities to add. But I also took a stop on the way down here. But so I lose a dollar, but then I make 10, I make 8, I make another 4, and then I took a short up here. That could have lost. I could have lost a dollar. And we're using the idea of a $100 account risking 1%. And then I took a stop on this level. And so it does. Do you see how it doesn't matter when you have asymmetric risk reward? You put on the risk. There's no way to interact with the market and a trading idea without putting on risk. All you can do is undefine your risk. So if you just want to take a long and not use a stop loss because you're sure price will just have to go up eventually, you can do that, and you can think that because you didn't have a stop loss, there was no risk because eventually the price will go up. But plenty of people do that all the time. Yeah, maybe in the end they were right if they waited 2 years and they ended up longing up here and price eventually came back. But that's not what a trader does, right? A trader can't sit for 2 years with all their capital underwater 75%, waiting for years for price to come back up to their entry. Why not just cut the trade with invalidation? Why ride it all the way down to 16K? Because, of course, the ideas up here would be, well, I'm longing for a breakout. But price isn't breaking out, so, okay, well, it's surely got to go up. And then you're so deep underwater, you just can't cut the trade. That's the position you really don't want to be in as a disciplined trader. I just want to review where my FET alerts are here. I want to move one here. I'm going to keep this one here. I have a little downtrend, but price is kind of reclaiming this range. I'm interested in taking some scalps. I just kind of want to see how Bitcoin is holding up here on this. This is also a potential place where I would say, like, we might see adding into a uptrend could be a good play. But I don't want to add here. Right now, technically, we've whipped this level. This is a technical kind of resistance, and we've reacted. See how price behaves here and what order flow looks like. Same thing with shorting FET. You know, people would say, "Oh, you're going to get wrecked." It doesn't really matter to me if FET goes up to $100 because I'm out of the trade. But if I'm short up here, I've already removed my risk. But even if I got stopped out, I risk $1 to make potentially. And the only reason I'm bothering trading this channel, so just to let you guys know, I'm a technical trader. So what that means is, let me go to the other chart. I don't really care what the narrative of FET is. I know everybody's bullish. It's AI. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't know that much about FET in terms of in what way. Like, is it open AI? Is the whole world going to be using FET? It's the one crypto altcoin that, like, its use case is insane. It's revolutionizing AI, or does it just have AI in the description? Is this driven by just... So the point is it, if it's just driven by speculation, yeah, I'm not going to short the entire way up, but I'll look for technical structures, and I have no problem just saying, hey, I get to risk $1 here to make $18, or maybe I can get that invalidation a little tighter, or whatever it is, just trading in the context of this channel. And you have a center line here, and that's the structure of the trade. That's it. It's as simple as that. That would be the targets, and I don't have to worry. And so if for whatever reason this happens and people, because FET, it came out that it's not really AI, it's just Chat GPT. I know it's some kind of trading thing or transaction thing. It's nothing to do with Chat GPT, but you get the idea. And this happens, well, I've just taken a technical trade, and then I'm probably going to long off of a sweep of these lows. If it never comes, it doesn't really matter, because I'm just taking defined risk, and the same thing on lower time frames here, right? I mean, if you're long off of a reclaim of this range, take some profits up here, you could always hold some for a breakout. But if you're long and price goes straight down, it doesn't really matter because you're just out of the trade. So anyways, that's what we're talking about here. It's technical trading using risk management. It's really great when you take on a ton of risk without invalidation and you just go all in on something and it works. Of course, right? I mean, and anyone can do that. You could be day one and you could just say, I saw this on TikTok, I bought it, and it went up 500%. Now, is that a sustainable way? Are you going to survive in the markets week after week, month after month, year after year, just throwing all of your capital into something with no plan for being wrong? It typically doesn't work out for people. And so that's why I prefer to just use invalidation and risk management. I know nobody likes that. Everybody's looking for the last person who wasn't wrong, because they only want to be right. But I prefer to use asymmetric risk reward, risk management, and just being able to accept if a trade isn't working, cut it, you can always re-enter. Well, that was a good long rant. Yeah, I mean, I think this reclaim on FET is probably relevant. Still kind of grinding under this trend line, and all this is scalpable. These are like 5% moves. Nice grindy uptrend here, grinding into the trend line. Could always try for a breakout. Stop loss would be like 5% away here, 2R. I don't really like the tight stop loss here. I could see this just coming back down and retesting the trend line or the range. But the other trade, and the one I would be most interested in, would just be to actually come and run this wick. This, I want to go to the other chart. I went long here, personally. I need to clear this chart. Just be open to some ideas. Just keeping an eye on it. But maybe pop some of that trend line liquidity. And it would be a scalp. I'd probably look to de-risk it pretty quickly. But yeah, the trade I would much rather like would be, even if we come up and do something like this, but take these lows. Be a nice little impulse. I might even just wait for that if we get it. I probably lean towards a move up to this trend line being more likely to be a fake out. Doesn't mean it's not, whether it's this high or this high, doesn't mean it's not tradable, because you can trade it as a fake out. But we'll see. Then you could, something like this would be kind of interesting too, as a short. Come and sweep these highs. Could trade it tight off a rejection, and all these I would mark it into if there was a reaction. If price just went straight through the level, I wouldn't. Something like that, and then get long here. And you can kind of envision, you know, let's clear off some rando lines here. We'll just throw this into a group and clear it off. So we can get rid of this range idea here. Let's go to the 1 hour. Kind of envision something like this not being unreasonable. As this trend line liquidity gets popped, probably people longing into that breakout. Of course, FET's been really strong. Be a lot of interest, I think, in that. It may not reject, but I think scalpable to trade a little breakout of this trend line up into this high. It's about 5.8% away. And again, just scalping local price action. So not expecting to win every trade. You might even lose most of the trades, but the risk reward of these trades should offset that. And of course, if you win them all, so this, I'm not saying I will win them all if I take them here. But you could end up winning 8, 9, 10R in a scalping session. But when people look at the trades, you take one loss and they're like, oh my God, because they're not actually using risk management. They're maybe using too much risk. But if you, like this trade, if this trade worked, or if this, I am going to try to scalp this. I might just cut it up into here. I'm going to size it like this, but I might just cut it early. Just a 2R trade up into the highs. But anyways, you could end up with 8, 9R of wins, and you take a loss, and you've lost 1R. It doesn't really matter. I think this idea makes sense. I mean, this long could potentially be traded up higher if we just rip through this level. But we could fake out here as well. Just a little local breakout. Keep an eye on volume as well. But trading it more towards it faking out. We do have to keep an eye on some of these highs if we break out here. But so the idea here of sizing is I'm sized kind of smaller, looking for a clean break here. And if I take a stop, if I manually stop out my trade, it's going to be a pretty small stop loss. I just want to see follow through here. If I don't get it, I might just cut it. And so the idea here being that, well, if my stop loss is 3% away, then I don't have my whole account in this trade, right? I might take like a 0.2R stop for this 2R trade, just wanting to see a little bit of follow through on a breakout. Price kind of just retesting. Might not get any follow through. I don't like this idea as much as something like this. And FYI, I lose trades all the time. So if anybody, this is not, this is me explaining the concepts behind these trades. This isn't financial advice. I'm not recommending anyone take trades that they don't understand. That's not a system that they've built data on, because you're just gonna get destroyed. For example, I could literally lose all 3 of these trades and it wouldn't really surprise me that much. I lose 1R, 2R, 3R, and then maybe the 4th trade works and it is a 6, 7, 8R trade, and you're up 3 to 4R on a scalping session. I mean, that's the benefit of trading, again, with risk management. I would never take this trade without risk management. Never. I mean, I don't even think it's a high probability trade per se. But you don't need a high probability trade, right? This trade doesn't need to be very probable to be profitable, because you make $8 for every dollar you risk. So even if it only wins 40% of the time, it's wildly profitable over many trades, right? So I also want to just get a quick look at where the point of control is in this range. Yeah, so it is aligned with these highs as well. So this is, these local highs are, I'd say, pretty important. To keep an eye on. So far, price not getting any immediate follow through. No volume coming in. But just still kind of washing around the breakout here. Price hovering around an entry. Someone's saying the audio is bad for them, it's stuttering, but other people are saying no, it's not. And like I said, if we do start popping some of this liquidity, I will be looking to de-risk this trade pretty quickly, because I mean, I don't really want to sit in this trade if this happens. Just want to run up. That's the kind of idea of this trade. Kind of expecting price to follow through relatively quickly if we do break out and strongly. But let's talk about some of the pitfalls of scalping. You're a new trader and you enter a scalp, but you just can't take a loss, and you think, well, price should break out and FET's been so strong. It starts happening and you think, I know it will just wick me out anyway, so I'm just going to sit in this trade. So you start moving your stop down, and you think, well, the bottom of the range has got to hold. And so you just cut your stop completely. You see this and you're like, I knew it, I'll get out of this trade, and then this happens and price goes to 40 cents. And somehow you've turned a scalp on a little 5-minute trend line breakout into a trade that is either going to liquidate you or put you so deep underwater that you are screwed. So that's the kind of stories you hear of people who they just can't take a loss. It's like, well, just think about the idea. The idea is just to pop this trend line and test some of this liquidity up here. If the trade isn't working, then maybe just cut it for a tiny loss. Why hold it as price just keeps going further and further and further against you? But anyways, we'll see. Maybe works, maybe doesn't. Of course, it depends how you look at structure here. We're trading into some horizontal highs, local horizontal highs. Those need to break out. So we have a little bit of local resistance here. Trendline breakouts, by the way, aren't necessarily, they deserve a lot of caveats. Some assets move a lot better on trendline breakouts. Bitcoin more likely, in my experience, to fake out a trend line than many alts, especially ETH. But again, the idea here is there's probably some traders watching this, and probably a lot of traders watching FET, because FET's pretty popping right now. So you could see some momentum come into price here as people start seeing this trend line is breaking out, it's holding. You could imagine people longing into this if this starts breaking out, and you could imagine there being some nice buying pressure to push price into these highs. Could certainly imagine a scenario where and we'll see up here, like it's just an imagined idea for now. We see this big pop in volume here as people see a breakout, trapping some people and trapping all this liquidity on the whole move up. And again, this trade might not even work, so I'm just explaining the thesis. And then coming and wiping out all that liquidity and just forming a range. I'm not saying that will happen, but that would be the thesis of the trade. Where does the momentum come for price to push up to these highs? Probably some shorts to squeeze out here too that noticed this trend line and took some shorts with stops above these highs. So that's the thesis. Either works or it doesn't. And just I want to hang out, chill on the live stream for a bit, chat with you guys, but there's a chance that nothing relevant plays out during this live stream. Price doesn't move so quickly all the time, so we get some of these strong, impulsive candles. Someone's saying high time frame, please. Well, I already reviewed FET on a high time frame at the start of the live stream. Nothing really to cover more with that. And this is where, I have higher time frame short ideas on FET, but somebody could get confused if I have a long on FET too. The time frame of the trades are different, right? And I'd be open to just holding this long if price just breaks straight through here and using it to hedge out I've hedged out some of the risk if this works, but of my short. But these are all different time frames of trades. So you could have a higher time frame short and a lower time frame long at the same time. Usually not taken at the same place. Short at the highs, long at the lows. I'm just going to, I know, because on a lot of these live streams, like, I'll just end up, people will ask for charts. Can you check this? Can you check this? Can you check this? And so I'll go in, I'll just start checking charts. That's not really what I want to do this live stream. I kind of want, in a, hopefully it doesn't sound rude, I kind of just want to do what I want to do. Just hang out. I'm going to do some scalping. I also just, I know it doesn't sound like it's that much, but, you know, if I'm just doing my thing here, to also just sit and take chart requests, give your thoughts, I think is great. I think that's something I should do on a lot of live streams, but it's not really something I want to do on this live stream. I just want to hang out for a little bit. We'll chat. Relax. I'm in some longs. I'm looking for a move up on Bitcoin. It's a beautiful morning. So I thought, you know what? I'll just come and hang out on live stream. Doesn't have to be a big deal. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, that you ask for chart requests. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. So we'll see. We might get this little breakout. I mean, there's resistance to breakthrough. You know, we're probably, you know, need to look for places to get reactions. That's the other thing. Like, you start de-risking this on the initial impulse, just end up taking a break-even stop on something that actually does work. Come back down and retest this trend line. That's pretty common price action too. And this may shock you guys, but you know, it's funny because like the time frame that I'll trade and share trades, you know, in the Discord, my ideas that I'm trading, and especially on Twitter, I don't care. Taking a stop doesn't. I've taken hundreds of trades in a day, hundreds of scalps. You don't think I took some stop losses? I think I had like a 4-day period where I took like 12 or 1,300 trades on really low time frames, scalping. So that is something that you can. It's a great scalping, maybe not that low of time frame when I took those trades, but is a great way to just get familiar with setting up a trade, the market, and that should be done on paper trading, or if you want, which we have a great paper trading platform, by the way, that's free to use, or if you want to go on an exchange and risk, you know, if it's $1 for you, or trade a $10 account risking hardly anything per trade. That's another way, but just getting familiar with, and this is the thing. Like if I want to test, I'm not going to get too far into it, but I'll sit and I'll take the trades and gather my own data. I'm not going to just assume, oh, I can trade this style or trade this way because I'm so good, I have so much experience, so I'm just going to put a ton of money at risk without ever having even tried trading that way. So I'll actually spend the time, take the trades, whether that's paper trading or for me with a little bit of risk, or so little risk that I don't care if I lose every trade I take, and collect my own data. And so one thing I want to encourage people to do is, if you want to scalp, let's say you want to be a scalp trader, you want to trade the low time frames, well, before you put a bunch of money at risk, why don't you put the initiative in to spend some sessions? It does not take long to log hundreds of trades scalping on a low time frames. Pick a few assets, mark out some levels, mark out some setups, set up your trades, and say, okay, I kept my risk intact. These are the trades I took. You can just easily export it all into a spreadsheet and say, this is my win rate, this is my average win. I could probably avoid some of these problems, and just collect your own data. So when people ask me, they'll say, how many trades should I be looking to take per hour, and what should my risk be per trade? I don't know. Do you even know what you're doing? What's your system? Have you collected any data? Have you put in even a few hours of work to just test anything? I know that sounds maybe a little harsh, but what else could you do? So like when I see people saying like, oh, I tried scalping today, I got absolutely wrecked, I lost so much money. Well, why'd you have money at risk? You have no idea what you're doing. Bitcoin kind of washing around at resistance here. Double top the highs of the local highs, that is. Again, not surprised to see a reaction here. Not particularly compelling at all to me, like I said, for a short, and doesn't mean price. I mean, technically we have a rejection. Price is breaking below the highs. Not a ton of volume or delta here. I'd rather just fade that short. Got to keep an eye on FET here. So we have an initial little breakout. Price retesting the trend line locally. I don't think there's any reason to just bail on the trade, but the idea of a trend line fake out could become much smaller fake out. It's always possible. But for now, price holding above. And of course, the nature of trend lines is, if you're in validation, let's say it's just breaking back below the trend line, and maybe that's where you would cut for a partial loss. And it's important to distinguish the difference, I'll say it again, between where you cut your trade and why, and your invalidation in terms of sizing, right? Because if I size so that here I'm taking a 1 hour loss, and I had massive size, and I was just saying, well, the trend line can't break, I'm going to take a 1 hour, let's say a 1% loss there, that to me isn't particularly reasonable. If the trade works, of course you're like, that was awesome, I turned this into a 20-hour trade. But sizing this a little bit wider, which means smaller, gives you room here, where if you're risking 1% down here, then you could take a 0.3, 0.4% stop and just trade as 2R. So anyways, that's an important part of this equation. Oh, but anyways, the nature of trend lines here is that they trend. So in theory, you could go all the way to your stop loss on retests of the trend line. But that typically isn't the nature of a trade like this that is going to work. Can do it a couple times, but are you guys enjoying this live stream? Is this a thing? I'm not taking chart requests right now, just kind of hanging out. I just don't want to spend all my, like, let's call it in between time. Just like flipping through charting and giving thoughts. Because after, if you stay live for, and I've done some monster long live streams, hours and hours, it just kind of wears you out. Keeping an eye on Bitcoin here, but yeah. Again, shorting reactions here. I didn't take shorts up here, and they would have worked. And I know some members in the LATF did. But I kind of more opted to, if we could get a retracement, just to add to longs. But I did mention, a break back into this range. It's a reasonable short and could work as a hedge. I wasn't going to take it, but there's nothing unreasonable about it. All right, so FET's getting a move here. Again, we're trading this, well, and when I say we, I'm not saying you guys are trading this. I'm saying just we describing what we're doing here. I am trading this with the idea of a fake out. So the ideal scenario here is just to see strong follow through this point of control and this local high. These highs are very reactive though, so it's not always the most likely scenario. Like, you could call it a 1 hour trade and just be happy if you don't just follow through. You could always reopen on a reclaim. That's always something to consider in this scenario, and just add back on a retest if you get it. I'm going to be open to doing that actually. I just want to see if we can pop through these highs or not. And I'm probably going to just treat this as a 1 hour scalp-ish. Yeah, I'm going to close it. And I might reopen it on a retest. So this is a way to, I don't really care at this point if price keeps carrying through this level. Because what I'm kind of envisioning here is a possibility. So I can always reopen that trade if I want to on a claim of this level. Or I can just wait for the trade that I'm more interested in. But again, I'm scalping here. These aren't swing trades. I'm not treating them as swing trades. I'm kind of aware of these local highs. And what I wouldn't mind doing is, I could assess things here, but coming and adding back on a retest. And so basically, if I get into this situation, I'm not saying I will. What I've done is because I've longed into this and taken profits, instead of holding down to this retracement, which may or may not come, I have no idea, and round tripping the 1 hour profits, I can now add back, and those profits offset the risk on this trade completely, or close to completely. So essentially what I have is a wash on this trade if this happens and I re-enter, whereas this, if I didn't close it here, would just be a full stop loss. So that's one way to de-risk the trade, but again, we're looking at really low time frame structure, and I also may end up just turning what could have been more like a 2 hour trade, 3 hour trade into a 1 hour trade. But what's the point of pulling the level here if you're not going to be wary of it? And scalping is not for everyone, because there's going to be a lot of people conflicted here where they're going to say, oh, I don't want to close it. We're having the breakout, and what if price keeps going up? And feel really conflicted. But if price comes down, then they'll say, oh, I should have closed it. What was I thinking? And if price goes up and they close it, they're going to say, why did I close it? What was I thinking? You can't really assess these things on a trade by trade basis. You use principles. Sometimes it's the best decision. Sometimes it's the worst decision. You're trying to make reasonable decisions. And I know I can get into this trade again if I want to at any moment. I can just get back into it. I can get back into it where if I wanted to, where I pulled off the trade. It's sort of the idea I was mentioning about if if I had a big spot long position on FET deep in profits up here. Well, maybe if I saw a failed breakout here and price rejecting on a retest, I would just sell it off and wait for a deeper retracement or a reclaim. And the idea being, I can just get right back on the train where I got out if I want to. And I'm no worse for wear. And I'm lessening the chance of sitting through this big drawdown and potential much bigger drawdown. You don't have to worry about all these 5-minute candles on FET. I mean, that's not the time frame of your trade. Sign of strength, getting back up on these highs. Although I'd be looking potentially for another rejection up here. But that's the basic concept. So here's a concept too. If I re-enter with the same size and the same invalidation here on a reclaim, the trade looks pretty weird, but it's offset by the fact that I really was in this trade and I just profited from this move. And so if I just size it the exact same, I could always get back out of the trade and give back some of those profits. And so you can turn the trade into a break-even trade. But I'm not getting back into the trade here, by the way. I'm just explaining the concept. And I may not get back into it, period, but we'll see. I'll say I probably am explaining the idea of closing your trade up here or your position and getting back into it like it's a little more easy than it probably is in reality, because you could always have the scenario where this happens and you reopen it, and then this happens and you close it, and then this happens and you reopen it. I mean, there's context as well that it's kind of a basic premise, I guess, but I think a valid one. But you probably need to do a little bit more in certain scenarios work on that idea, depending on how the charts are developing. Someone's saying, how do you decide where to TP if price is in discovery mode? Sorry, I was thinking about something else, not the question. I mean, it depends. Sometimes there's kind of, I'd say, clear structures into all-time highs. So I'm going to use the term famous kind of loosely here. If I'm famous for anything, it's calling some all-time highs in the last cycle on different alts and whatever. And I'm not calling them. I'm just pointing out structures that are relevant. So I have some tools that I like to use for all-time high kind of parabolic moves into all-time highs that I think are quite consistent. They're not perfect. And so if I have some of those structures, I'll use them. if I don't, and there's just a parabolic move through all those structures, then hopefully looking for new structure to form up after a big all-time high breakout and signs of weakness in order flow. Or not necessarily weakness, but sometimes it can be extreme FOMO and absorption. All right, Bitcoin's retesting the previous highs. Relevant technical structure. This is kind of, you see a reaction. The ideal scenario for just a strong bullish continuation would be to see this structure hold. Bitcoin not always as clean on these SR flips, especially locally, as a lot of alts can be. But we'll see. So the context here, if I get back into this FET trade, is essentially I can take the full stop and still be break even. Right. I'm trading the same idea. I just scalped the profits off of it. I'm trying to scalp myself back into it. The idea is this breakout, but thinking, why don't we just run into this point of control here? That's a pretty important level. We have this local structure. Why not just take the profits off of it and try to add back on a retracement? I could always add on a reclaim. And so I'm adding a step into this trade, which is, so hopefully that makes sense, which is kind of taken on an extra time frame in the trend. So instead of now sitting here round tripping the 1R, but also not invalidating the trade. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just leaving the trade open. And even leaving it open till your stop loss gets hit and not caring until it does and just trading to targets. That's a lot of traders will do that, and there's no discretion. They're not really looking at medium or the intermediary levels and deciding to take profits here and look to add back. So I'm just explaining what I'm doing, and it's sort of like trying to squeeze every ounce of juice out of the trade. So I am early. Yeah, I think I only slept for 6 hours or maybe 7 hours, which is actually a lot. It didn't feel like a lot. But anyways, if just hypothetically, had you not taken, closed this trade on this initial move, yes, you might be a little annoyed that, I wanted price to break out here and it didn't, and now I've round tripped my trade. Your trade's not invalidated here. I mean, the only reason I closed my trade here is because I would expect it more likely to see something like this, even if the trade's going to work, and if we just rip through this, then I just got a 1R win. If I don't even get a trigger here, great. I don't care. I'll look to trade one of the levels I'm much more interested in. But anyways, this would be a little bit more common on a move like this. Could be aware of some of these local structures too. A retest of this. Gets a little murky. Like, just trying to think about how and if I want to get back into this trade. let's just get some of these out of here for a second. We have a couple levels. We have this range that we swept, we reclaimed. Again, all that's scalpable as well, for sure. Point of control. The idea is a breakout, and what would be kind of murky price action is if we don't retest, we come and retest this range low, which would also be the trend line locally, and maybe the beginning of a little parallel structure. And I just have to decide if I would want to get back in there, tighten up the position a little bit. I already know what this trigger would be, or if I would just sit and probably something that could make a little more sense. Just waiting for a little bit of local structure if we break down this breakout. Otherwise, just looking for the range low. Of course, I still have to think about the possibility of price just rallying and claiming this level, and if I want to trade that as well. But here, I'm not just going to reopen the trade because, in my case, white, but there's a green candle starting here. That can work, but it's not a strong technical idea. Never expecting price to move in it straight to targets. This could be choppy. I can always get back into the long up here if I want to. It's yeah, even though scalping's on a low time frame, still requires some patience and discipline. I mean, it requires a ton of patience and discipline. It's not typically, scalping is not like taking a trade every 2 seconds. I'm long, green candle. Oh shit, I'm stopped out. Still trading structures. I mean, I'd like to, the ideal of a scalping session, I was talking about this again on the live stream, members live stream last night. So I'd drawn out this idea as we were reclaiming of this. It would be a highly reactive level in theory, coming back up in the 618, tapping these local highs and maybe looking for a move up and then a retest, something like that would be interesting. But you could technically trade something like this, it was my point. You could justify, as soon as there's a wick through this level, or whether it's on the retest or the wick through, but you could justify sticking your stop right, and we can go to the 1 minute time frame here. If you're trading this structure, you can absolutely justify this. A trade like this is going to be not, if you're trading like this, and especially if you're not incredibly disciplined, you're going to reduce your win rate greatly. But this is a 9R trade, right? I mean, price came down 4.66%. You're probably not going to get the full 9R out of it, because if you're scalping into this level, and the reason this could be justified is this is the absolute lowest time frame way to structure this trade, which is, the structure is this: sweep this high, reject, enter on the rejection, and a stop above the high. But you probably have to peel some profits off of it when you could wait for some reactions, but when price starts consolidating here, even have this little liquidity grab, you probably got to get something off of this trade. And even if you pull 3R off of it and you want to let the rest run to the retest, that's fine. If you want to just hold it to the lows, there's nothing unreasonable about that either. The only thing is, I would like to scalp it, take some profits off it, and maybe add back to it if I get the chance, doing sort of what I just did here on this trade. But this is a 13R trade. So the point is, if you do this well, and you have to be very careful, you can't just be shorting every 1 minute candle. You have to still understand the structure of the trade. You don't have to have a very high win rate if you're pumping out 8, 9, 10, 13R scalps, right? Like this trade, not a very high risk reward. I might get something a lot tighter up here or down here. We'll see if those trades present themselves. But you know, the trade I took with the breakout here, I only got 1R off of it, and even if it went to target, it'd be like 2.3R, 2 to 2.3R. So your win rate needs to be decent. 50% would still be great trading those types of setups. Here your win rate's going to decrease. So there's still reasonable setups, and if you can trade with these tight invalidation setups, which I share sometimes with those kind of 0.5, 0.6% stop losses on a move like this. The reason I don't like sharing them is because often is because you can still trade this with a much wider setup. Trade it differently on a retest, whatever it is. 3R, 4R, 5R, and it's still it's much easier to execute. It's much easier to sit in, much less likely to just get wicked out on a stop loss. And I find that new traders who try to focus on trading with insanely tight invalidation on the 1 minute chart, it's not a great way to learn. You're basically handicapping yourself, because you just don't have the ability to execute trades on that time frame, and you don't. You also don't maybe at the beginning of your trading career understand why this is really important structure, but like this really isn't, and to be trying to short this with a tight stop, and then this, and then this, and then this. Yes, you're shorting on the low time frame with low invalidation, but you're still identifying relevant structures. So anyways, all that said, you know, you have you do a scalping session and you bring back 2, 8, 9, 10R trades back to back. It's pretty nice. You could take 16 losses in a row and be break even for the session after that. But in my view, invalidation should be technical, and I'm using invalidation in the context of sizing. So there are times where you can justify incredibly tight invalidation, but there are also times you can't. Like, so for example, is there a difference between shorting, and I'm not saying what will work, shorting this here with a point, let's just call it whatever, we're going to move it up a bit, we're going to call it a 0.72% stop. Is there a difference between shorting that with a tight stop and shorting this with a tight stop? Right? This doesn't make any sense to short this with a tight stop. You want to short a rejection from the POC? I'm just showing an example. Maybe this makes sense. I wouldn't trade it personally. You're bouncing off the middle of a channel, you're in a breakout. The context of this, we're on the 1 minute time frame just to get structure. Maybe this holds, but why take this short, right? Are there no better trades on any charts than this? But anyways, the point is, sometimes it could be justified to use a tight stop and increase the risk reward of a trade. Sometimes it cannot. Someone says, move on from FET. You've been talking about it for 30 minutes. I understand what you're saying, but I'm trading FET. I'm scalping it. So this live stream, I spent the beginning of the live stream talking about Bitcoin, talking about higher time frame Fed. But this, I explained, this live stream is me just hanging out, maybe taking some scalps, maybe answering some questions. Okay, just for you, QQ. Memes to the moon, AI to the moon, 500%, 10x from here is easy. We're just getting started, baby. Crypto is still new. You're at the beginning. It's not the end. I've got a list of the top 10 alts that still have 100x to go from here. But yeah, one thing I like to do is I like to get nitty gritty too, even when I'm taking a swing position at times on the low time frames, and just see if there's an opportunity to get into a very tight invalidation trade on a swing. That's kind of the ideal scenario, but not wanting to screw myself by trying to invalidate a swing trade with a local structure. But sometimes you get those opportunities. I guess I should have kept the Bitcoin chart flipped upside down. That was working way better. Yeah, getting a reaction off these pivot highs can certainly come back down to the range lows. I mean, you gotta be open to that. If we start flipping this, I know I'm upside down now, and I'd probably take this long if I got it. Let's go back this way. Got to be open to that. If we start failing, structure starts flipping to resistance. I just take the 1 hour stop on the ad. Maybe look to add back down here. So Fed's retesting, just to recap, I'm scalping basically, or potentially if I get setups. I took a scalp here, but I just closed it at essentially 1 hour. Watching this POC, if we got strong follow through, I would have just held it. Really targeting up to here, but the idea was to maybe open back on a retest. Not going to open yet. Just going to keep an eye on this level. But at this point, if I take a stop on this general idea, I'm still just break even between the two scalps. Getting a reaction here. I don't really love this. It's valid. Equal lows here, clean retest, clean reaction. I don't need to fade it too much. I could get back in on the retest. Just wouldn't mind trading the extremes of the range, but let's just see here. I might just open up the trade, keep my invalidation the same, maybe take a partial on this retest. Just gonna see if we react to the middle of this channel. My entry is going to be essentially the same regardless. Yeah, not the cleanest entry, but again, I'm playing with, we'll see here. I'll let the level retest and playing with a little bit of profits on this scalp. The idea being closing up here, getting back long on a retest, so sort of adding a step into the trade here. Maybe longing into the retest would have been a little more accurate. Not super inspired by this trade anyways. I'd like maybe if I was just on an average day, would probably just be having alerts at the lows and highs of this range and look to trade that, but we'll see. I want to get a quick look at volume. Take a look at Bitcoin too. So Bitcoin's still coming off pretty big bullish divergences in the context of the broader range. Pretty reactive level up here. Probably scalpable for sure. Mostly long on Bitcoin from lower. I'd like to see this position maybe hold, but this is a kind of a better add down here anyways. Be happy to take it. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that potentially for Bitcoin. Might go grab some coffee. 1.5. So we'll take a look at order flow here too on Bitcoin in a second as we retrace here, and maybe come and sweep those lows. I mean, Bitcoin just loves running those stops and liquidity, and there's no doubt that although I think reasonable to be long on the ad where I'm from, there's no doubt that there's a lot of resting liquidity there. So far, there's limit orders holding up the selling pressure, but we need to keep an eye on it. All right, somebody's asking long rune, OP, FTM, and chill season. That's not how I like to trade. I mean, I haven't looked at the FTM chart today. But for example, I took a long on Matic down here. I like to long at the lows and ride the move up. I don't like to maybe long at the highs. And the same can kind of be applied to FTM. I did close out a lot of my long on FTM though. But I'll share some thoughts that they apply on all time frames here. Let's bring this back. All right. So we're on the FTM daily chart. Would I want to long up here? Personally not, because where's your invalidation? And how easy is it to chill? It's easy if it goes straight up from here. It's not very chill if this happens. And of course I don't know if that's going to happen. But we could dive in here and say, well, what would be the invalidation of a long up here? And what would a trade structure look like? But, so I got front run on like a giga FTM swing long. This is the daily chart, by the way. So waited very patiently, looking for this low. Like I had it drawn out from way up here. And we're waiting essentially months. Get front run by a teeny bit. Even on this day, I was like preparing to take my FTM swing long. But again, more months go by, and I showed this on Twitter as well. I took this long on FTM. But the problem is I took profits on this 46 move. That was my primary target. I was willing to hold for a breakout, but if we get down to the nitty-gritty, full disclosure, we had a good move on a breakout, and I trailed stops under these lows, and I got wicked out of a big portion of my position. I still have some of it running. So now I'm enjoying some of this big impulse. I mean, even with a bit of this position open, it's quite nice. No reason maybe to close that position on this strong breakout. But why wouldn't I be interested in just opening new longs up here? Because I think at some point we'll get some nice structure to long off of. Let some of this FOMO play out. It could be higher, it could be lower. I don't really care if I'm longing higher or lower. I care if I'm longing off of reasonable structure with nice invalidation. Like, so I would personally wait to start setting up a trade for some structure to form. Gonna be a lot of FOMO. It's not that I couldn't see FTM going higher. And start preparing to long a flush with nice invalidation. Gotta keep an eye on this fat trade as well here. There's a big point of control there. Maybe time to start looking for this. And if I long it, well, I'll also have invalidation, right? I might be taking a stop. Time frame of this might be more like this would be ideal. Look for some continuation off of this level. I'd be able to run a little bit of a tighter stop. So I'd do something like that, personally. So it's not to say that, oh, you missed a long down here, there's no more longs. It's just, personally, I'm not just going to randomly open a long here. I mean, you could get into these time frames and say, well, there's some local setups here that you could structure. I prefer to run the wait for some of the bigger retracements for a swing long. That's still holding the trend line here. We'll see. I feel whenever I see the viewer count change, I feel like I have to give explanations of what I'm doing every time. You have to go back and watch the live stream. I'm scalping. I've explained risk management, exactly what I'm doing. This is all, I can't lose a penny. This is all paper trading. I'm not recommending anyone follow these trades that I'm taking. So I'm just, if you're popping into the live stream and thinking, oh, a trade, all in, what is this? That is not what we're doing here. I don't want to keep explaining the trades over and over. I longed to break out on Fed. I took profits up here, and I'm longing the retest again. A bit wider in validation, but I might cut it manually for a small loss. But right now the trade is working. We have now taken this wick, which makes it a little bit more interesting to me. Just a structural thing. It's not a big deal, but you have this wick impulse origin. Price comes and runs the wick. We front ran it before. If we had done that on this first candle, I might have entered a little bit more aggressively there. But now we have a little bit of structure getting interacted with. This is more my speed for when I'm scalping an entry. Wasn't willing to just sit sidelined. You know, the basic idea was there, which is why I did enter here, but I was a little hesitant. I would have liked to see some of this structure at least interacted with. And now we have, so no worse for wear, just not the cleanest entry. We can pull some of our local fibs here. We're at the GP on Bitcoin. Not a lot of structure. So how relevant that is, hard to really say, but not a lot of volume coming in here either, but we'll see. Maybe we just continue the uptrend. All right, well, we're back in the FET long. We're scalping the low time frames, kind of looking for some of these bigger risk reward setups. And what could happen? So like, let's just say this re-entry kind of works to 2R. Well, I've essentially turned what was initially a 2R trade maybe into a 3R trade, right? By taking profits and adding back. And that's not a bad thing. That's always nice. We're a long ways off, let's say, from that becoming a reality. But I've essentially removed the risk from this whole setup, even if I take a full stop because I've taken those profits here. But if this happens, well, then I'm going to put 1R risk back on. But the risk reward of this setup is going to maybe be a lot bigger, more like 8R. And so if this happens, I'll be up 3, risking 1. If I get stopped out, then I'll be up 2, right? That's how math works. And if it wins, then it's starting to look like just a monster session, right? If this wins, you're up 11R. If this wins, and maybe if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, you do similar things where you take profits, add back, take profits, and you can squeeze more out of it. There's risk involved with that as well, of course. I'm not going to say there's not, but some sessions, amazing. What you really want to avoid, some sessions could be a break-even session, you take a few trades, make a couple here, R here, lose a couple R there, not the end of the world. You want to avoid monster loser sessions, and you should be able to do that if you're trading reasonably with risk management. And, in terms of risk, I know there will be some people in here that just have almost no idea what I'm talking about. But the basic idea here is you get to define your risk. And you can say, what am I comfortable risking on this trade? But instead of going with your gut, right, because your gut's misleading. Your gut says, well, you should risk everything because it's an AI coin and FET's been on a strong uptrend, and of course this 5-minute structure is going to hold and the price is going to go to $10. That's what your gut might tell you. Better to use math. And what math tells you is that over a large series of trades, and I as a trader believe that everything in the market operates in probabilistic terms. We don't actually ever know what's going to happen. We can think we do. I can say, I knew it. I drew this out. I said price was going to come up here and it was going to take these highs right into this level and then it was going to retest this level. And that's exactly what happened. Well, I do that every day, but I still don't believe I know exactly what's going to happen, because also sometimes I don't do it. But how could I know? I'm using high probability ideas, but I don't know what's going to happen. So because it's probabilistic, you can do some math and you can find out that if, let's just say you have, I don't remember the exact numbers off my head, but a 70% win rate. That sounds pretty good. 70% win rate. Maybe you have a high risk reward system. If you put on 1,000 trades, you're going to have massive loss streaks eventually. It's the law of large numbers. So it's the same idea. What are the odds that a coin, if I flip a coin 10 times in a row, that all 10 land on heads? The odds are really low, right? We all know that. If I flip it 10 times, it's going to be, should be about an even mix of heads and tails, maybe one or more of the other. It's a 50-50 chance. And the odds get astronomically low that it's going to land on heads 10 times in a row. Now, what are the odds it lands 10 times in a row if I flip the coin 10,000 times at some point in those 10,000 flips? Well, we're approaching 100%, right? 6-7 times in a row at 1,000 flips, it's approaching 100% are the odds. And so even though the individual event might not be very likely, it's a certainty if you do enough flips. And that's the same with trading. So even though it's not likely that you just, you're trading reasonably, you're trading clean setups, that you're just going to lose 5 trades in a row, you sit here every day and you do it, it's just going to happen, 100% chance. Even if trading perfectly technical, high probability setups, eventually you'll run into 5, 6, 7 trades in a row that lose, and that's why we use risk management. Does that make sense? Hopefully. And so that's basing it off of math. So instead of using your emotions and your euphoria and your greed to determine that you're okay to risk everything on this trade, that's just you not really actually perceiving the risk in the trade, right? All right, see, this is where I don't like. Very happy to have taken the profits off the initial breakout and turned this into 2 trades. Now we're just kind of in this sort of ambiguous grinding on the trend line. We've swept the lows again. I don't really need to close this trade off of that. We have a little more volume. I just kind of, I'm not loving this as much. I feel like I'm taking the trapped side of this fake out at some point here. Let's see how this reacts. I'm not gonna knee-jerk close it, but we're still claiming the trend line. This is the idea, right? Of I mentioned earlier on the breakout. It's a descending trend line, so you can go deeper and deeper underwater without actually ever breaking down the trend line, if you're using that as your only invalidation. Bitcoin getting a nice bounce off the GP. Always a nice level to have pulled. Highly reactive. I actually went into the 30-second chart here, kind of messing around a little bit, but I think every single pivot was the GP on the 30-second chart. I'm not going to be able to get to the 30-second chart probably on this time frame, but it was kind of, I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's such a reactive level. So again, it's always just nice to have pulled. Six one eight. 618. 618. Gonna wick through it a little bit here. 618. We even had some really small minor 618s in here. And then the party ended. But that's the basic idea. Just a very reactive level. It doesn't mean you have to trade every 618 you see on the chart, but it's worth having marked out on the time frame you're trading. You'll notice it. 618. Actually, this was a slight front run. I have too many fibs on here. This was a slight front run of the 618 actually at the time. Get rid of this. It was close. From the impulse low, you could call it the 618, but for now we could maybe note that we have an untapped 618 at this wick. So this is kind of a major liquidity idea here. But I am long. I'll take the stop if I must. All right, I might go. Wait, is this? We're logarithmic on this. I didn't actually realize that. I should have read that warning. I thought we were just log on the other chart. It's not a big deal. It just changes levels on the low time frames ever so slightly. So I kind of have to make a decision. I don't love this trade with the re-entry, and after fees and everything, I'll basically be like 0.5 R up. The general idea, maybe a little less if I close now, but I don't know. Trend line kind of breaking down. Maybe could have faded the retest entry. Just look to trade the range extremes. We have a little bit of structure here. It's not much. I mean, I can just take a full stop here in a second, right? That can happen easily. We're washing around the trend line. Some nice little volume here. I don't think it makes sense to just panic out of the position. That price even wash around a little bit, make a decision. If I take the full stop, then I'm basically break even on the FET trades, but yeah, I don't really think it makes sense to just jump out of the trade. Someone says, what's your reasonable Bitcoin target in case price just breaks down from here below 64.5? I mean, it's all structure dependent, right? In the sense that different targets become more reasonable as more structure breaks down. So if we go to the daily chart, I mean, we have some pretty important levels here. We have a high time frame. Volume area was important. Resistance at the time. High volume area here. Yeah, probably some levels worth looking at if our high is coming in here. Well, I would say that this, you know, if we can retest these lows near this wick, these daily candle lows, that's where we swept and reclaimed. If we break that down, well, there's no structure here. So I would say if we break these levels down where there's no structure, this becomes very reasonable. This is a major level. It's also potentially an idea. Like I said, I'm willing to change my perspective on the chart. I think longs here can make a lot of sense on Bitcoin, which is why I'm in them with trying to get some local invalidation. But there's some nice ideas of having a wave 3 come in somewhere in here, a 4, and then a wave 5. I kind of lean towards a deeper wave 3 being nice. Maybe up into this 81K region, some levels up there. But we're gonna have to see how price, if it gets there at all, reacts at all-time highs. And then having a run down into this 50K region wouldn't be something that is off the table for me. Put in a wave 4, and this is where I would really like to look for longs if something like this happens into a deeper wave 5. And if we just keep ripping up, I mean, we're gonna have to come up with some new ideas, right? But on a higher time frame, this is kind of what I'm looking at. This could come in lower as well. I want to see how price moves here. There's some nice levels around 80, 81K from a fib extension perspective. I don't know if this is in the free trading view. Someone's asking how can you have volume bars on the side of the chart. So anchored volume profile or fixed volume profile. Maybe that's only in the paid version. I'm not sure. But that's what it is. And it just shows you at which price there's the most volume. But yeah, hopefully you guys are seeing how there doesn't have to be a lot of panic in trading. Just kind of trying to make reasonable decisions, not fear-based, reactive decisions. Just kind of thinking about this trade. It's on a low time frame. Again, we have some local structure here holding up, retesting the trend line. I don't love the trade, but it doesn't really make sense to have just closed it on this wick down here. Back around the break even on the second entry. Oh. All right, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna pour some coffee, and we'll spend a little bit more time on the stream here. I'll chill around for a little bit longer, and we'll see what the charts bring. All right, we're back. Getting some interaction with the center line of the vet channel. Go to the 15-minute chart. Change up the perspective a little bit. Have a rejection from the point of control. Kind of chopping around here, some wicks. So something that the idea of this trade being a liquidity grab, locked in some profits, but it could also be a liquidity grab, fake out just to here, right? To the point of control. And we want to see some momentum carrying in on this trade because we're building up all this liquidity down below us. And this is an idea as well here. Just a mini fake out. Trap some longs. Bitcoin coming back up, retesting this level. I don't know, there's nothing wrong at this point with considering just cutting the second add on or second reopen and a small loss. Waiting for a little more clarity. I consider doing that. I want to see some of this structure hold, but much nicer to just maybe think about getting out of the trade and reassessing. Taking the small win and looking for a long, maybe wiping out all this liquidity at the lows of the range at this point. But we'll see. Give price a chance to react here. Could also use this ascending structure as some invalidation, expecting some kind of reaction there maybe, but not really too inspired either way. Ugh. This is Scalping, everyone. Pretty high adrenaline, exciting stuff. We can kind of see on a low time frame here, little 1 minute range just forming. If you wanted to get into the really low time frame, I mean, you'd be short, long, maybe another long here. This would be a tougher short to take. I think I'm just going to cut this trade here. Any second, cut it. Let's see how this trend line's holding. But I always get back in. Take the half-hour win off the idea. Reassess. I'm going to cut it. Cutting at the local low. I'm not just going to re-enter either if price just wicks back up here. Might wait for a cleaner idea. If we do this, maybe consider getting back in at some point in there, but I think the idea of the fake out through the trend line and then coming and sweeping these lows is nice. We closed the first leg up at the point of control, tried to add back onto it. But this idea is still sort of in play even from here. So looking more for this trade. At this point, maybe get much cleaner setup, something like a 10R. Into these lows. Can also have this liquidity grab coming quite quickly if we start taking some of these lows. I'm not shorting this. Still a breakout trendline retest. Be just as happy. For example, I wouldn't care if I got out of the trade and this happens. I don't really care what happens here, but if we start breaking some of these lows, this leg of the move can come quite quickly. Got a choppy range forming here. Certainly could hold the structure still, just a descending structure. But like I said, I'm happy to be out of it. If we get follow through, so be it. Oh boy. Okay, let's liven things up a little bit here. How? I don't know. Look at Bitcoin order flow for a moment. Starting to see some selling pressure coming in here. 2.3 million delta. This could be kind of interesting to see how this plays out. Maybe we get a lot more selling, some bullish absorption. Would have been funner to have a cleaner breakout here for the live stream. Yeah, not getting back long on FET here. I might consider it higher, but this making the decision to close. Again, longing every little reaction now, and then taking partial after partial after partial. That's a slippery slope when scalping. Options trading. What do I think about implementing options in your trades? I've done some options trading. It's a whole other beast, but there could be some nice setups for options trades. You know, timing is a really important factor. Let's think about something here. Take a look at ETH. ETH doing what everybody wants Bitcoin to do. You know, this uptrend actually is so reminiscent. Even with that little wick through it of this uptrend. It's where Bitcoin or ETH just kind of grinded up in on the 4 hour, a very clean parallel structure, although not all the lines were highs to lows. Yeah, it's you could have called some of these deviations. It's back in 2021. Maybe not quite, so it's a lot tighter. I mean, ETH just looks ready to rip right into the 786. Just want to see how these parallel structures are interacting. Certainly the trend angle seems to be getting some clean interaction. Forming a little range here. Just getting some reference for the local ETH price action. Range high is obviously scalpable for sure. There's not a lot of volume here to be trading off of. Probably look for higher on ETH. Maybe come and wipe out this liquidity at some point. Maybe use a predictive. This wick is pretty deep. I was kind of curious where price would need to come to align a GP at this move. Probably through all-time highs. It'll be a front run. pulling from that wick is maybe a little suspect. Yeah, I'd say lots of liquidity building up under this uptrend. Kind of hard to say, but something like this would probably be an interesting long. May not get it though. Strong uptrend, assuming Bitcoin goes to all-time highs. I don't think I'd short this. It's not. You have clear enough invalidation. Just wait for more signs of weakness. Something like that, maybe. I don't think there's any reason to short it though. Maybe a little bit of bullish absorption forming on Bitcoin locally. We'd have to bounce here from these lows, but we're seeing some selling pressure come in. Nothing major. Definitely seeing a little bit of signs of support coming in here. Someone's filling some limit buys. Probably the main idea I'm looking for on Bitcoin today, if my add to my longs doesn't hold, it's just a quick wipe of liquidity. This. And I'm gonna probably look to take a long off of that if it holds up and price just doesn't rip through the level. Add back to my long. Adding to this long here. Yeah, I added longs down here. Somebody's asking last night. Just been seeing bullish absorption and order flow. There's a, I don't have the levels pulled on my chart here, but there's a 786 and our point of control is around here. Price retesting the local GP, doing its thing, ranging, probably rejected from its local GP as well. Yeah. So again, price loves these 618 fibs on all time frames. Very like I said earlier in the live stream, very reactive levels. And if you're in here trading these time frames, I think worthwhile to have at least on your chart for some frame of reference, as the price doesn't always bounce from them, of course, but or reject bounce, but they're highly reactive on a lot of assets, I would say. So FET still grinding on this trend line. Hasn't broken it down yet. A little bit of trend line structure. I think something that could be telling here could even be this local downtrend. See if we take these highs. I'm not chasing a re-entry into a long here. One thing I do like as a general rule when scalping, in terms of am I going to take profit, stay in the position, is I like the trade to be working in my favor pretty quickly. When I took the initial entry, I want to see price moving in my favor. I want to see this point of control not getting rejected, or I'll just take profits. I don't want this. I can always find another entry. The trade should be working pretty quickly. That, of course, is not reasonable if you're trading on higher time frames and swing trading. If I'm taking along here to all-time highs, it's not necessarily reasonable for me to expect price to just go straight in my favor. Or straight, it might go straight in my favor, but straight to my targets, right? I'd be willing to hold some trades longer if that's the time frame they're being traded on. Someone's asking how much weight do I put? I'm going to answer a couple questions actually. I'm just reading. What weight do you put on market sentiment? Everyone was bearish at 40K. Everyone looking for new all-time highs now. Well, it's kind of hard to establish what the market sentiment is, I would say, because that comes with some bias too. I mean, some people are looking for all-time highs. Some people are thinking we won't make new highs and they're bearish. Some people might say they're bullish, but I prefer to look at order flow. I prefer to look at what traders are actually doing, not what they're saying on Twitter. And what I'm seeing in order flow is that there's a lot of people aggressively selling into the all-time highs, and that's being absorbed. So there's some people that just are unloading positions at all-time highs, and that's both in the order flow and the BlackRock ETF and some of the exchanges I look at. And there's signs of big traders limit buying up into those all-time highs. So right now, the limit buyers, the bigger traders, are winning, I would say. And so that's how I'd like to weight my bias. Is I want to see, I don't really care if people are posting rocket emojis on Twitter, because I want to see what traders are actually doing. What they're doing in this consolidation is selling, aggressively market selling, and it's getting absorbed. So I weight that a little bit more. But it's not that I'm always right, but it's the same thing again here. Before we pushed up to all-time highs, just so much selling. That's why I was longing into this, because you could say, oh, everyone's so bullish, they think all-time highs coming, they're going to get wrecked. But that's not what people are doing. They're just selling into it. So these are the positions actually opening. And again, I've seen big bullish divergences not play out too. It's just, that's my read on what's happening here. Yeah, so somebody asks, how would you approach a vertical chart like ETH for a hedge short? Well, there's a couple things. I mean, if it's just vertical and you're long on ETH from much lower, maybe there's no reason to hedge short as of now. Like, there's going to be some risk in your position. I don't know where you're long from or what the time frame of your ideas are or whatever, but you know, right now we could wait for signs of weakness. Maybe you don't need to hedge short the exact top. Wait for some weakness to form. Again, I don't know where you're long from and what time frame you're looking. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. What time frame you're looking to hedge on? But yeah, I would wait for signs of weakness. Right now, I mean, if price is just grinding straight up, maybe we get a big impulse and rejection, take some profits, could start to look for some hedging opportunities. Oh, spot from 2K. Well, yeah, you got some wiggle room. I mean, it's hard to say. It's just we could look at levels like the 786 is highly reactive on, but there is on ETH, but not a lot of structure here. I mean, there's these highs. These are probably relevant to look at. There's these highs are relevant to look at. Just a bunch of equal highs where this impulse down started. So maybe looking for signs of weakness around there. Start looking for hedges if that's what you want to do. But price might just keep grinding up into all-time highs. Someone's asking, could you check out XRP? I think it's going for new highs soon. Sorry, I was reading a couple questions. One person was asking, where did I add to longs? I think I already answered that. They're looking for local long setups. I mean, price is just kind of chopping around, ranging here. I took some longs down here. Price went lower while I was sleeping, but didn't hit my stop loss. But we'll see. I mean, we're just kind of chopping around. Probably the most ideal setup for me would be to come and take these lows with a clean reaction. It's always possible we just wipe out a bunch of liquidity. I mean, as we have seen, yeah, I can take a quick look at XRP. I'm not going to take a bunch of chart requests, but I'll pull it up on the chart here. Nice little sweep of this high, big wick to the downside, retest of this level. I mean, theoretically, a lot of liquidity overhead to run through these highs. We retest them. Probably, yeah, I mean, I think there's some pretty bullish ideas on XRP. Man, this was such a sick long. I took this long. None of it's open anymore, but took this long into this descending trend line, sweeping this wick into this level. Super tight invalidation. It's a swing idea. But yeah, that's like in this really, that's the most rewarding thing in a really choppy range. This is a daily chart, just to have that plan to take the wick into a key level, quick reaction, and just get a beautiful, beautiful long. And being rewarded for that patience in that choppy range. All right, this is probably a little idea on FET. I'm not going to short it, but I would maybe scalp short this and just look to get out of it quickly if I didn't get strong follow through. But I'm not really going to trade this time frame on FET. But I think it's a possible idea. I'm just going to chill, look for some of these bigger structures. But yeah, this is where I know it seems maybe a little counterintuitive. I don't know. I wouldn't actually be FOMOing back into my FET long here. If anything, I'd be looking to short this. back into these lows. But from an emotional perspective, like I think where you could go wrong on this kind of FET scalping idea, things are going well, you get the initial long, you take profits, you get about 1 hour out of it, you take a partial, you decide to cut the trade, and then price starts going up, and you're like, oh, should I get in the trade, and you're like, it's breaking out, and then you long it again up here. And that is where your execution's really falling apart on this time frame. You got out of the trade. If you wanted to get into it, but don't FOMO even on this time frame back into the trade, because this is just a scalp short, not a re-long. That's being emotional. Look for maybe those lows, but anyways. Somebody's asking, any psychological tips to stop thinking about missed profits? I took a massive trade from 38K to 61K, but seeing how prices just kept going, I feel like I actually lost money instead of making it. Yeah, I mean that can be a reality. You never, it can be easy to be dissatisfied unless you long the bottom and sold the top. And as soon as price starts going any bit higher than you sold, you can start feeling like for example, I longed FET here as a scalp. I sold it here. If price just went up to $30, I'd be like, oh shit. I could have made a ton of money had I just held that. I was happy with the profits on the time frame I was trading until price just goes straight up. But this is how I would look at it personally, or how I do look at it, is sometimes you're going to find yourself in great positions, great trades where, like you said, you had a massive trade from 38K to 61K. That's awesome. And you've closed the trade, but so you're out of the market, you're out of a trade, and maybe you're feeling a little bit of FOMO because you closed at 61K and price just made new all-time highs and it's going up into all-time highs. I don't know if you're a trader. I don't know what style of trading or time frame of trading you do, or what your thesis for 38K to 61K was. But for me, I could be completely out of the market at any given moment, and I can look for reasonable setups and opportunities. There's endless opportunities in the market, but you have to take reasonable setups with reasonable structure. You're not going to win every trade, and so that's how I trade. I don't expect to win every trade. I expect to have to evaluate the market on the time frame that I'm trading it and put on some risk, take some trades. They either work or they don't. But yeah. So what I would say, for example, I did not take this long, and this was happening, and I just said, hey, I'm going to wait for some more clarity. This was my update in the Discord. I wouldn't mind seeing a deeper retracement into these lows. That's what I was looking for here. I'm going to wait for some structure to form and clarity. If I miss a chance to long into the all-time highs, that's fine with me. I don't see a clear long setup here. And so what proceeded to happen was price started breaking down, and we got this nice wick of liquidity, and there was like 170 million volume in this 5-minute wick, and I saw tons of longs getting stopped out. And I thought, okay, I had the idea of longing lower, but I can just take in this new data point and say, well, why not look at this as a range? I didn't realize how much liquidity would be under there. There was a lot, but I now know that. And why not look to get it long on a retest of this range? I have some nice invalidation, and so then I get into that long. And I guess there's a confidence for me that whether I take a stop loss on a short and price is going higher, or I close a long, or take profits on it and price keeps going up, that I can find another setup. I can get back into the market. And that happened to me several times in this, but for example, I got really fortunate with some trades. So I started trading this as a range. We had super bullish divergences forming here, but I got some great trades. I shorted into this, and I got some longs into this. I got multiple shorts, longs, shorts, longs, shorts, just trading a multi-day range. Longs on this wick, got a nice retest, and then we just had really bullish absorption here, and we got this big impulse to the range. I had a big target, I won't go into the details, at 57.7K, and so price wicks straight into this level. Of course, I don't know this is coming, right? And so this I had turned into a really great ad on my trade. It probably looked, or on my longs, probably looks something like this, right? And I took tons of profits off of it on this rejection, and I actually took a short up here that I got stopped out of. Now I'd be like, oh God, no, what's happened? I took a 1 hour short and a 13 hour win. Or I could just be like, hey, I can just get back long in here if there's a reasonable setup. And here we started grinding up on big bullish divergences, and I got a long into this, and I didn't short it, by the way. I got a long into this and took some profits on this. This was during a live stream, so great. I waited for some structure to form, and I got ads back into my longs, and I longed into this. And so who cares? I missed a little bit of this rally. I didn't hold this long from here to the all-time highs, but I took reasonable setups, got nice profits, got back into the market. I had a short, I cut my short, and I flipped back long. And so it's just, you know, I don't need to have one perspective on the markets that never changes no matter what price does. I can have invalidation, and I can just look for new setups. So the point is that's a skill, obviously, right? Like, that's a skill. There's a skill component to that. It's a principle and a skill. The principle is you obviously sold at 61K because you thought that was going to maybe be the top before a big retracement. There was no big retracement. So let's just say you were wrong, quote unquote wrong, if we want to phrase it that way. Okay, so what? So you have new information, new data. Doesn't mean you have to FOMO along the top again, but if I again don't know how you trade or how you structure your trades, but if where you're competent allows you to start structuring new ideas, then just do that. I mean, it doesn't even matter if price breaks out to, if I was just coming to the Bitcoin chart for the first time in my life, and price had broken out of this all-time high, it was up here, there's opportunities here. I can structure trades up in here. I mean, I can structure trades at let's just say Bitcoin goes on a massive rally. As far as trading goes, which is just asymmetric risk reward and technically structured trades, price could be up at 150K, and you could have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hour setups, right? And it's like you can just get long with invalidation. If your plan is just to long the bottom and hold to the top of price, well, on a macro level, probably a little too late because we're at all-time high. So the bottom was the bottom. We're here, and so you just accept the reality of the chart as it is, and as a trader, you trade it. So I guess I'll elaborate on this a little bit more, because you said any psychological tips to stop thinking about missed profits. Well, the missed profits part, just stop thinking about it, because guess what? You miss profits on so many trades, thousands, millions, across so many assets that you don't even know are trading. You've missed profits on almost infinitely more opportunities than you've made profits on. So missed profits, you're missing profits right now on some chart that you're not thinking about. It's not even something worth thinking about in my view, missed profits. And the psychological tip would be, instead, this is my opinion as a trader. This isn't my opinion for somebody who doesn't have any thesis on this time frame, but it's also a psychological pitfall to say, you know what, I sold at 61K, and yeah, I missed the top by a little bit, but I think price is just going to go down. That was my original thesis. I'm sticking to it. Why not just take on new data, right? And just say, you know what, maybe I can change my thesis. And I've done that many times in this uptrend. There's times in this market where I've called the exact high, low, and that's been my primary thesis. That's always fun, right? Like I had a really sick harmonic pattern here that had high, low, high for a major rejection. That's great. Those are great feelings. But here I had ideas for rejections, but I also was saying, hey, my basic perspective here is coming from these lows, major structure. If we break out of this structure, we're probably pushing to 48K, right? I can be bearish for a deeper retracement. Got a pretty deep retracement here. I was looking for a little lower on the charts, but it doesn't really matter. There were long trades, short trades on different time frames. But saying when we're down here, if the most basic way to look at the chart, I'm going to flip bullish to 48K as more likely. This ended up just being a super grindy uptrend. If we hold this level to 48K, this is a highly reactive level. That's why I shorted it, but I longed down in here because I was short from 48K, maybe looking for that deeper retracement. We swept these lows, we reclaimed them, and then started consolidating with super bullish order flow. So I'm just going to change my perspective based on new information. I don't have to make a decision at 16K what I think every pivot will be, and it will never change no matter what happens. So yeah, this is a nice short, but why not take this long, because now we're grinding up, we're claiming these levels. You could have even long this, I didn't. But anyways, and if 48K is claimed, well then I have this chart, I shared it on Twitter. Why not be open to just all-time highs? I mean, really what makes sense, there's some levels in here to interact with, like the one at 57K, which we did react at, but that was aligned with this really high volume area, not our point of control, but really nice here, 57.7K-ish. Got that reaction, we broke out, and just change your perspective. Claiming important levels, probably need to be looking for all-time highs here. Claiming this, probably need to be looking at 48K. Got a reaction, we claim it. Anyways, so I guess, does any of the things I'm saying make sense? You can forget about missed profits, but you can start thinking about new opportunities if they arise. Same thing if I take a stop on a trade here, right? So let's just say Bitcoin, even if I stop on both of these, I'm longing, I'm taking another ad, and Bitcoin stops me out. I'm not just going to sit here thinking, oh man, I missed it. I could have shorted, and I should have shorted the top, and now I'm just going to look for a new trade setup. I don't really care what happened with my last trade. It has nothing to do with the outcome of my next trade. We can look at FET again. Not the place to get long on this breakout, not the place to FOMO into it. We're kind of seeing some classic choppy, chop 'em up price action here. Yeah, I'd just chill, see if these lows get run. Would have been a nice scalp short. Somebody's asking, are there too many details regarding value area low, value area high, naked point of control, and VWAP? I would like to learn about these ideas, and do you offer them in your learning materials? Yeah, I have some materials on that, that subject. It's not too complicated. in terms of how these tools work. Point of control is just like if I pull a point range profile here, the reason this level is relevant and why I was looking to take profits on the initial scalp long here. Well, this, if you pull the this range profile across this range, this is highlighting where the most volume was traded. So this is where the most positions are essentially opening and closing. And it's always worth watching, especially when you have a really well-defined point of control. Again, some structure starting to break here, and this is probably where I'll end the live stream if it comes quickly, but would be looking to take this long on FET back up into the highs here. Someone's saying, finding that something, or sometimes it's really hard to change my thesis because subconsciously I look at every new level or a breakout as a trap / deviation. Yeah, I mean, let's be real on even if the move eventually works, say like on Bitcoin here, every move here kind of on some time frame has been a trap or a deviation, which is why I don't like longing up here, right? Looking for those longs on retracements. But that is, I mean, I don't think that really matters. I mean, depending on how you trade, and if you're using invalidation of risk management, maybe it's a trap, or like, let's just say, for example, you find a long in here for all the reasons you do, and there's bullish absorption, and you take the long, and it starts working in your favor. I'm just going to put just this as a random long position. That was into the weekend. You're looking for all-time highs, and this happens, and we have this big wick, and maybe you're going to take a break even, maybe you're going to take a full stop, maybe you took profits, or maybe you closed early, but the point is, then it's a stop and it's a deviation and you get a stop loss. So you can put on the risk regardless of what you think is going to happen. You could even think, I think we're just going to fake out here and we're not going to break out into all-time highs, but you just put on the trade anyways. So, I think like that's one of the benefits. It's very hard to completely overcome bias in your trading. I have bias in my trading. You just simply can't. I mean, I didn't take these short triggers last night, and there's some bias introduced into that idea. I mean, I guess it's also that I can just short other things that I would prefer to short, and I can only want to take on so much short risk at a time in a correlated market. But anyways, the point is, the chart doesn't care what you think or why you think it, and the beauty of technical trading is you can just get a technical trigger. I take them all the time that I just don't think is going to work, but I take the trade anyways, and oftentimes it just works because it's sort of systematic, right? I could just think the top is in because it hit all my perfect Elliott wave targets and whatever, but then I see a big bearish divergence forming, I get a technical trigger, and maybe I just take the short. And I get stopped out if I'm wrong, because I have, beyond feelings, ways to find some of those trades or take some of those trades. And yeah, it doesn't feel great when you take a trade that you don't think is going to work and it doesn't work, but that's what, I mean, you should be structuring your trades in such a way that for every trade you think isn't going to work that does work, it's paying you more than the trades that you don't think are going to work and don't work. I shorted up here on Bitcoin. There's quite a bit of FOMO coming in here. I mean, depending on how you looked at the market, it's breaking some super important levels. It was a major target for a Gartley. I also longed on this wick on the 886, right? So this was the idea. These weren't, in some ways, particularly easy trades to take, This short was much easier. This wasn't very easy. But it's kind of like, I don't know if it's going to work actually. But the risk reward of taking these trades is quite nice. And if I get stopped out, I get stopped out. So anyways, I don't know. You don't have to think a trade's going to work. In fact, I think I made a video not too long ago on YouTube, and I posted on YouTube, called "Why You Should Take Trades You Know Are Going to Lose." It's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but the idea being that you don't know what's going to happen, and there's certain trades that offer such good asymmetric risk reward that even if you think they're quite unlikely, you should just take them. Just take them. I mean, use risk management and take them. Let's just say that here, I'll use this trade as an example. This isn't the long I took, but this would be the type of long I would take. It's just this was on a weekend. I did take this long and this long. But you have a little range here, massive bullish divergences, and you wick through and you take this. And you say, you know what? We have massive bullish divergences coming into this range. We have our all-time high above. But for whatever reason, you're bearish. And you could say, I think this will probably not work, and there's going to be, there's a 70% chance I get stopped out of this trade. I think it maybe only has a 30% chance of working. Well, take the damn trade. It's 24R. I mean, it doesn't matter. Even at a 30% win rate, this is a good bet. And so this is the idea. And we're going to talk about kind of the idea of win rate here. And I might end the live stream after this, but it's so if somebody tells you, I'll give you $10,000 every time this coin lands on heads, but it only has a 30% chance to land on heads, and you pay me $1 every time it lands on tails. Well, you wouldn't say no. That I have a 70% chance of losing $1 every time I flip it. No way. I'll just take, that's not a high enough win rate for me. You would say, well, yeah, I'll do that because, yeah, it only has a 30% chance to land on tails, but I get 10 grand if it lands on tails. I'll risk $1 to make 10 grand. That's asymmetric risk reward. So one of the things that people think makes the most sense in trading is taking the trade that you think is the most likely to work for whatever reasons you think they're likely to work. But even if you don't think a trade is any better than a coin flip 50-50, or even maybe you've determined in your head that it only has a 30% chance of working, we're not risking $1 to make $1. If you're risking $1 to make $24 into all-time highs or $20, then even if it's quote-unquote low probability or you think it's going to lose, you can still put it on because the asymmetric risk reward. So I hope that makes sense. But the most important thing of this is that you have to manage your risk. So you don't put on a trade and risk everything you have on this trade. You just put on a reasonable amount of risk. If you have a $100, if you have a $100 account, maybe you risk $1 to make $24 on the trade. And now you have a $124 account if it works, or you have a $99 account if it loses. That's the idea. You don't risk $100, and somebody could say, well, yeah, you do, because now you have $2,400 on your account. But then you take one loss and you're out of the game, right? So we're trying to systematically build our accounts by limiting our risk of massive drawdowns or liquidations, and you can do that by just taking on a reasonable amount of risk. If you're taking trade setups like this with reasonable risk, 1, maybe 2% can be justified, but you should base that on your own data. You should base all your trading on your own data. Don't do any of this until you've actually do some paper trading. Trade with $1, whatever it is. It becomes a lot less likely that you're going to blow yourself up when your wins are 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times bigger than your losses, and you're only risking 1% per trade. But anyways, we've been sitting here chatting, talking about the things. nothing maybe worth. We're ranging between GPs on Bitcoin. Surprise, surprise. FET, we are basically pulled a little bit of profits out of Scalp, but just waiting for lower. I might end the live stream. We've been here for 3 hours. I kind of thought I'm just gonna wait for this trend line liquidity to break down on FET, and I'm interested in this long. I'll probably share that in the Discord. Other than that, I don't know if I'll do a ton more scalping today. We'll see. There could be other ideas here too if we show signs of strength and what have you, but that's kind of the idea I'm interested in on a scalp. Bitcoin looking for higher. Won't be particularly surprised to see this liquidity wiped out, but some selling getting absorbed as of now, so maybe not the most probable thing, but again, who knows. I hope everyone enjoyed the live stream. I just wanted to kind of come hang out for a little bit, and we'll